hello there. Hello there. Hello. Good to have you back for another video. Hey, video worked the first time this time. I'm getting better at this. I'm pretty good at this, I think, over time. I mean, it takes a while to get really good at something, I think. Anyway, welcome. And welcome back to another video. I had to make this video. Actually, I'm kind of in a video making mood, so I might make a few videos and have them come out over the course of the next couple of weeks because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Not only the series that I just started, which I think you guys have taken a look at, about bad takes on debate. There are a lot of bad takes on debate out there.
Oh.
And, yeah, just a lot. I think it's all because of the Charlie Kirk killing. Everybody wants to talk about debate now, and he's becoming kind of synonymous with an understanding of debate, which is not a good or healthy understanding of debate. So I'm going to make some more like that. And then from the other side, we got that side of it, and then we got the other side of it, which is all the braver angels. Let's all hold hands and listen to each other and realize that we do have real differences, but we can still have brunch.
Oh.
Which is what Braver Angels is all about, and all these other, like, dialogue and discourse are superior to debate movement, which always fails, because dialogue is debate, and discourse can be debate. We move through these things. But what I want to talk about in this video is something even more important than those two things, but look for those videos coming out pretty soon. And also now you can support the channel. I have my lovely, thanks to a couple of viewers who are like leaving me comments like, hey, how can I support the channel? Support the channel now. Ko-fi.com/my name, Steve Yano. And you can leave a little tip. Not like a tip like get good, bro, but like a little tip that would be maybe like American dollars, which might be kind of nice. Or whatever currency of your choice. I'm not picky. I'm fine with it. Anyway, we do have a lot to talk about in this episode. What bothered me about and why I wanted to make this video is I was teaching my class, my debate class, and I wanted to see if they wanted to do kind of like some pickup debate. Pickup debate. Like, I want to see what you guys could talk about. And since it was Friday, last Friday, I was like, let's pick something really big. And so what I chose to focus on was Taylor Swift.
Oh.
Everybody loves this. This is the biggest issue facing the world right now, is this new album. And I thought it would be good to do a debate on whether or not Taylor Swift is overrated. We spend too much time on this. And all of my students were like, this is not important. This is not worth discussing. This is the Hollywood Reporter's coverage of the incredible gap between different critics and different criticisms of the album. Both good and bad. Criticism doesn't just mean negative. I hope you know that by now, watching this channel. Criticism is an articulation of an alternative meaning. That's what rhetorical criticism is. So when we think about rhetoric, we think about rhetorical criticism. It's a criticism that offers an alternative meaning to what people might generally get from it, or what might generally be taken from it. And you say, well, look, this other meaning is present there too. Or even better with rhetorical criticism is when the critic says, the meaning that you think is good is predicated on these meanings that are definitely in the text, which are probably not so good, which are probably based on assumptions that are essentialist, possibly even misogynist or racist or whatever. So that's the power of really good criticism. Criticism isn't just negative. It's not like, oh, you should have done this better. Criticism is, these are some of the hidden meanings in the text that you might not be, fully aware of. So my students were like, this is not important. This isn't worth debating about. Taylor Swift album is not worth debating about.
Is that your best?
Well, I don't think so. I think it is, and I want to prove it to you by looking at a couple of different texts today. So the first thing we're going to look at, hopefully I have Hopefully I have this on here. Oh, yeah, I do have it on here. Well, this is the Hollywood Reporter. But what I want to show is a couple of different things. First of all, I want to talk about one of the things that Taylor Swift gets criticized for, but also is like part of her power or why she's worth talking about, is this entry from Thomas Sloan's Encyclopedia of Rhetoric. I wonder if I can put myself in here. Video capture device. Let's see. Oh, look, there I am. So I can be in the corner. And I'll shrink this text a little bit, and I'll be good to go. I probably should have an Adobe PDF setting, but I just don't have one yet. So hopefully you can read this. The commonplace. The commonplace. Now, this is an interesting way to think about Taylor Swift. And there's several different layers to this. The first is that she relies on different commonplaces to generate her songs. We could think of her songs. We could think of her things. People have said it's poetic, it's lyrical, it's art. We could also think of it as arguments about a particular way of being in her perceived world, which I think is like, the middle of the United States, Tennessee, Los Angeles, maybe New York. A generic way of seeing the American experience. And then she draws on those generic commonplaces and then makes arguments about how hard it is to be a particular identity in these different situations. Right? So let's look to commonplaces here and see what we can see. Now, this entry is quite good. And let me give credit where credit is due. It's very long. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but it was written by Ann Moss. I don't know who Ann Moss is, but great job, Ann Moss. You did an excellent job writing this entry on commonplaces. I might have gone too far there. Let's see. I think I might have gone a little bit too far. Uh-oh. What entry are we even on? That's the problem with this version of the, I should just have it as a book, and then I could just look at it page by page. But looking at this way, it's like, how far away did I scroll from where I want to be? I feel like I hit a big entry here. Oh, yeah, audience, we're pretty far away. There we are. So this is the entry I want to talk to you about. In the early modern period, commonplaces were a universally understood mechanism for generating structured and amplified discourse written in oral. It was only towards the end of that period the term commonplace began to acquire connotations of banality, and eventually became identical with trite truism. That doesn't really interest us at this time because we're not interested in that. Later history. And I also think commonplaces are still around, which I'll get to in a second. Since Aristotle, however, in the 4th century BCE, commonplaces, topics, or loci communes have been bound into the construction of cogent argument, the gathering of material developed composition. For Aristotle and his topics and his rhetoric, the places, which would be the topoi, right, or commonplaces, the topoi, the most effective ways of arguing from the basis of generally accepted opinions. So this is real familiarity with your audience or with your culture. There are generally accepted opinions that one can base one's arguments on. So when you look to anybody who's trying to write something persuasive, and I think that Taylor Swift's records are persuasive, not just in the sense of like, buy my music, this is great, these are really good songs, but persuasive and trying to communicate a agreed upon experience that certain people share, to say, we've shared this experience, that I think that she relies on these. The one that always comes to mind is high school. Like, she seems obsessed with high school. And I'm not sure why that is. I think high school might have been her last kind of average person collective experience. After that, it starts to get more and more narrow. She could speak to other artists but that wouldn't appeal to us. I think this latest record, it's kind of equal high school commonplacing and the internet commonplacing. That's what I've noticed about it. That's where it's kind of coming from, the commonplaces. But keep in mind, for Aristotle, it was a much more technical idea than what I'm presenting now, which was there are certain things, certain ways that things work that you can reference. Well, generally accepted opinions. I think most people would have the generally accepted opinions that high school is difficult. The high school is transformative, that it really surprises and shocks you. It makes you face your weak spots. People aren't very nice in high school. All these things would be commonplaces. They provided models for making deductions rigorous enough to satisfy the criteria of dialectic, while in rhetoric, arguments could be loosely formulated as audience response would tolerate. Commonplaces were ratio innovative procedures. How do you say that? Ratio innovative procedures? That's a crazy word. I wonder if that's a real word.
Oh.
I guess it is. It's in the Rhetoric Encyclopedia. It's got to be real. Or places common to a range of disciplines of inquiry or lines of investigation. Cicero also wrote topics in which he accommodated Aristotle's commonplaces more specifically to rhetoric, particularly forensic rhetoric. Now, forensic rhetoric is rhetoric about the past. What happened and how should we judge it? That's what forensic rhetoric is about. Mostly that would be today law. My client is innocent of the charge of murder. That's a forensic question. It's about something that happened. There's also the famous story about Cicero saying, well, if you're interested in rhetoric, you shouldn't read Aristotle's topics. That's a much more philosophical approach to meaning and communication. So there's kind of dismissal of that there too. Cicero codified the procedures and gave the Renaissance a language in which to talk about commonplaces. They were the seats of argument. Sed is argumentorum. Local habitations, places that anyone drafting a speech should visit in order to see whether this material could be effectively extended by drawing on the patterns of argument they contain in outline. So this is like very technical. Commonplace formulas included arguments to be drawn from definition, genus, species, enumeration of parts, etymology, conjugates, similarity, difference, contraries, adjuncts, antecedents, consequence, contradiction, cause, effect, comparison. And it goes on and on and on. But what ends up happening with commonplaces is people start to see this as a way to generate knowledge, to generate things to say. So they keep notebooks, very much like any writer would. But these aren't people we think of as writers of things like novels or poems or even songwriters who keep a notebook of inspiration or whatever. This would be a notebook to keep places to where when you do need to make a compelling claim to someone, you can look in your notebook and find all of these commonplaces that help you generate something. They provide a model to help you generate something that is going to move that person. So I think that's one reason that I think it's kind of interesting to argue about Taylor Swift, or why it's valuable to argue about it, because we get a sense of these commonplaces and what is she drawing on, and are these commonplaces things that we can also draw on to make larger arguments about what's good, what's proper, what's appropriate and inappropriate, the things that people really like to debate about. Not just like federal government policy. People love to debate about that, but not everybody. People are like, I don't know enough. I don't really want to talk about politics. But things of like, what value should our society pursue? What's the meaning of this or that incredible moment in life? What does it mean to get married? What does it mean to have a child? What does it mean to graduate high school? What does it mean to go to college? What does it mean to be popular on the internet? All these things are the subject of many different songs. The most popular commonplace for songs is all these different kinds of romantic relationships you can have. And up until this point, I think Taylor Swift mostly wrote about that. But now she's in this long-term committed relationship, so it has changed. The commonplace she goes to now is like, how has this changed the way that I'm thinking and feeling about life? And she's accessing all of those commonly shared things. But then there's this different level, the second level I want to talk about in terms of commonplaces and why it's important to debate about whether she's overrated or not. You might think this is a waste of time kind of debate. It's really not, because she herself becomes a commonplace, and she becomes a commonplace to evaluate herself. So is this album an appropriate album for her to make? Is it at her level? Is it at her quality? And then this also becomes the measuring stick of other music. Is this other music as good, less good? Does it hit a nerve like her music does? Plus, also, everyone talking about what it all means and everything gets people collectively engaged in rhetorical criticism. So everyone's bringing up their own reference back to events, commonplaces, or what we might call logos. The more technical aspect of the commonplaces, this more technical aspect that we talked about here of Cicero really lining it out, definition, genus, species, enumeration of parts. All these technical things are things people refer to, and they say, well, that's just not the experience I had. Or that's not the experience you should have. The experience should be different. And so it gets people speaking about their life experiences in a way that I think is pretty valuable. So debating about it, I think, matters quite a bit. We also have another way we can think about it, too, which is the most important part to, I think, Taylor Swift, because this stuff becomes evidence. I know that you don't like to hear that. A lot of people don't like to hear that. A lot of people like to hear this idea that debate was invented by the Vulcans from Star Trek, and then it's this purely logical, rational appeal. In debate, a lot of that purely logical, evidence-based, rational appeal is performance. It's a performance. It's a performance that you put on in order to assure the audience who's deciding that you belong there and that this debate is serious. That's not something that is a given. Debate is serious as something that's performed. For debate to be serious, it's something that has to be performed. You talk to any attorney, if you know an attorney really well, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll be like, well, this is a very performative kind of business. We have to have the books and the cases. We have to have the dark wood panel table. We have to, wear a suit when we're meeting with clients because this is what they expect. If it wasn't like that, they might think there was something wrong, even though they do not know how to particularly evaluate the practice of law. These are the things that make them feel comfortable that they're in the right place. Just like a classroom. A classroom has to be a certain way to make you feel like you're in a school. If the classroom is not arranged in a certain way, or if it looks cheap or tacky or in disrepair, you might think this is not a serious place of learning. These things are extremely important because these are the commonplaces that allow us to access a particular kind of attitude, Kenneth Burke would say, that lets us be open towards ascribing different kinds of motives. Or we could look at the classroom or look at the law office and say, oh, their motives are this and that. This is a serious place of learning. This is a very serious attorney. This is a professional place. And then your attitude is, I should listen to them. I should hire them. I should listen. I should go to school here. All of these things are incredibly important in terms of that. But let's look to something else. Somebody might say, well, it's just music. It's just her talking about her life. How important is that really? Well, for this, we go to, of course, my favorite and a favorite of the channel, Perlman and Ulbricht's Titica's new rhetoric, which I know you're excited about. Everybody's excited about because I talk about it all the time. So you should like it. If you're watching this video, you probably like this. So let's talk a little bit about the epidictic genre of discourse. Now, most everybody is familiar with forensic. I just explained it. That's arguing about the past. That would be the work of attorneys, particularly criminal defense attorneys, or civic cases. Who wronged who and what are they owed? Because they did this, because they were negligent, here's what happened. So it's about the past. Here's what happened. This is also like any sports rhetoric. Why did the Jets lose the game last weekend? Why did the Jets lose continuously?
Is that your best?
These kind of questions are opportunities and invitations to forensic argument. Forensic argument. Deliberative argument is the one that really occupies a lot of social media, which is like, what is to be done? What should we do to resist the Trump administration? What should we do to make sure the Democrats support the kind of legislation that we want? What should we do to quiet down our annoying liberal leftist friends? What should we say to them when they call us names or when they say our policies are draconian? And these are all deliberative arguments one can get into. What should be our policy towards China? What should be our policy towards the UK? All these things for the United States come up all the time. And what should be our immigration policy is a big one that everyone's kind of discussing right now, or fighting about, you could say. Maybe it's moved past the discussion and it's into what we might characterize as a fight. But, I might also characterize it as a national debate. A lot of people would use those terms in journalism, which makes you wonder what the difference is between a national argument and national debate. But deliberative and forensic, pretty familiar. Epidictic, not so familiar. Epidictic is celebratory speeches. Speeches that demonstrate why this moment right now is important, why we should feel the way we feel about it, why we are collectively here. It's not really about doing something or believing something about the past. It's about being something. And epidictic speeches often are associated with eulogies, or what was called speeches of the dead. I can't think of the word right now. I don't know why. But in the ancient world, you could do, I think you could do a whole class on eulogies from the ancient world and really learn a lot about how they saw themselves. Because the epidictic genre brings the values and the beliefs and the practices that we have right now and really pushes them into a position of valorization. This is why we're who we are and why we're so awesome. Let's read a little bit of this epidictic genre, because I think they have a really good take on this. Aristotle and all theoreticians inspired by him make room in their treatises on rhetoric alongside the deliberative and the legal types of oratory for the epidictic genre. The latter had unquestionably asserted itself vigorously. Most of the masterpieces of academic eloquence, the eulogies and panegyrics, that's the word, panegyric, of a Gorgias or an Isocrates, showpieces famous throughout Greece, were speeches of the epidictic kind. So most of the speeches that we know are epidictic. Unlike political and legal debates, real contests in which two opponents sought to gain the adherence on debated topics of an audience that would decide on the issue of a trial or on the course of action to be followed, epidictic speeches had nothing to do with all that. A single orator, who often did not even appear in public, but merely circulated his written composition, made a speech which no one opposed on topics which are apparently uncontroversial and without practical consequences. So that's an interesting way to characterize it. They say, it doesn't make sense if you think of speech as something controversial. It's just like, here are some thoughts about what matters to us. Uncontroversial. This is very much like the Taylor Swift album, right? And without practical consequences. A lot of people think that, and they think, well, it's not worth it to debate pop music. Whether it be a funeral eulogy, the eulogy of a city for the benefits of inhabitants, or speech on some subject devoid of current interests, such as the praise of a virtue, of a god, the audience, according to the theoreticians, merely played the part of spectators. That's the way we do think about pop music, isn't it? After listening to the speaker, they merely applauded and went away. These speeches were a central attraction at festivals attended periodically by the inhabitants of a city or a group of cities, and the most visible result was to shed luster on their authors. Such a showpiece was assessed as a work of artistic virtuosity, but this flattening appraisal was considered as an end, not as the consequence of the speakers having reached a particular goal. That's sort of interesting. So do we think of it that way? Like, is it a good album because it's artistically like an artistic virtuoso piece? It's not the end of it. That's not the end of it. That's not the purpose of her making this album, is it? It's to mean something. It's to communicate something as an artist, right? The speech was regarded in the same light as a dramatic spectacle or an athletic contest, the purpose of which seemed to be the displaying of the performers. Because of these special characteristics, the Roman rhetoricians abandoned its study to the grammarians while they trained their pupils in the other two kinds of oratory which were deemed relevant to practical eloquence. That's exactly what the American school system has done too. Make an argument about this historical moment, make an argument about what we should do in the future based on the Constitution or based on law in your country. To the theoreticians, it was a degenerate kind of eloquence with no other aim than to please and enhance by embellishing them facts that were certain or at least uncontested. It is not the ancients saw no other purpose to epidictic discourse. According to Aristotle, the speaker sets himself different goals depending on the kind of speech he's making. In deliberative oratory, to counsel what is expedient, that is the best. In legal oratory, to establish what is just. In an epidictic oratory, which is concerned with praise and blame, his sole concern is that what is beautiful and what is ugly. Now, that's a description of Taylor Swift's record. What is beautiful, what is ugly, what is worth praising, and what is worth blaming. If you look to the songs, like she has a song Canceled, she has Eldest Daughter. I I don't really care for that song so much, but that song is a kind of an important argument worth talking about. I think that these songs indicate to her what is praiseworthy and why, what is blameworthy and why, what should be celebrated and what should be cast out of life. And it's also something that is shared with the audience. Like, we all know that this is inappropriate. We all know that this feels terrible. We all know this is an inappropriate way to act. We all understand that these demands are well beyond anything reasonable, but they're made anyway on people of a certain identity. It is a question then of recognizing values. So how does it work? So the epidictic genre of oratory thus seemed to have more connection with literature than with argumentation. And that's kind of how it's been treated. Our own view is that epidictic oratory forms a central part of the art of persuasion, and the lack of understanding shown towards it results in a false conception of the effects of argumentation. The effectiveness of an exposition designed to secure a proper degree of adherence to an audience to the arguments presented to it can be assessed only in terms of the actual aim the speaker has set himself. The intensity of the adherence sought is not limited to obtaining purely intellectual results, to a declaration that a certain thesis seems more profitable than another, but will very often be reinforced until the desired action is actually performed. This paragraph here would have really helped analysis of Donald Trump's January 6th speech, because that's what happened. It wasn't a logical decision. Like the January 6th commission were looking for, where's the part where he incited violence? He never did. He incited an action and incited a value. But our understanding of inciting as this causal connection doesn't work because it's epidictic. It was a speech of blame and a speech of derision. And then people become the arm of that blame or derision. They perform it. And I think that's what happens when we think about the Taylor Swift stuff. The fans become, or want to become, the kind of subjects he's talking about. This is getting into Ed Black and second persona kind of stuff as well. Demosthenes, considered to be one of the models of classical eloquence. We love Demosthenes, right?
Oh.
Fantastic. He's spent most of his efforts not in just getting the Athenians to make decisions in conformity with his wishes, but in urging them by every means at his command to carry out the decisions once they were made. He wanted the Athenians to wage against Philip not just a war of decrees and letters, but a war of action. And it quotes Demosthenes here. The taking of a decision stands halfway, so to speak, between a disposition to take action and the action itself, between pure speculation and effective action. So what they're arguing here for is that the epidictic becomes this important place where we coalesce and put energy into the kinds of feelings and the kinds of things we respect and admire that then become the basis for a deliberative claim that comes later. The intensity of adherence, aiming at effective action, cannot be measured by the degree of probability attributed to the accepted argument, but rather by the obstacles overcome by the action and the sacrifices and choices it leads to, and which can be justified by the adherents. The existence of an interval, whether long or short, between the time of adherence and the time of the action it was designed to stimulate, explains the intervention into the debate, after it has supposedly ended, of values that have been overlooked or played down, or maybe of new elements that arose after the decision was made. I don't know if that really applies to her music, but this is like when we're talking about her, an artist, or her music, or the contribution to society, this is the important part because these values spring up almost out of nowhere. And so talking about a popular artist or pop music can really get us to access certain values that we don't even really know that we hold on to, but a good rhetor or somebody who's thinking about it can say, no, I don't like this because it supports this value, and this value is derided by good society. And then there you get that argument, but that's an epidictic claim. What is blameworthy? What is worth judging? Well, let's fast forward a little bit here. This is actually worth reading in totality, but I don't know if I have the time for it here. But what they're going to discuss and what they claim here we'll continue where we left off here just a minute, just a little bit more, and then I'll kind of talk about this idea in my understanding of it. The intervention, the likelihood of which is increased if in the meanwhile there's been a change in the situation, has a twofold result. On the one hand, it is hazardous to evaluate the effectiveness of a speech, and secondly, the adherence gained by a speech can always advantageously be reinforced. It is in this perspective that epidictic oratory has significance and importance for argumentation, because it strengthens the disposition towards action by increasing adherence to the values it lauds. It is because the speaker's reputation is not the exclusive end of epidictic discourse, but at most a consequence, that a funeral eulogy can be pronounced without lack of decency beside an open grave, or a Lenten sermon can have a purpose other than the renown of the preacher. And then they get into some specific arguments, and then down to a section I really like about the difference between education and propaganda, that hair-thin line between that. But epidictic speeches are most prone to appeal to a universal order, to a nature or a God that would vouch for the unquestioned and supposedly unquestionable values. In epidictic oratory, the speaker turns educator. So this is why it's worth debating about this new Taylor Swift album, because it is epidictic. It is a celebration. Or maybe if you don't agree with her, you don't see things her way. It is an argument about what values we share. And it's made in such a way to where these values appear to be what values ought to be. You make arguments that they're timeless, that they're universal, that they apply to everyone. And then this album and her songs become evidence used for deliberative discourse among people. I should be doing this because it's like that Taylor Swift song. I should be making this move in my life because it's just like that Taylor Swift song, or what Taylor Swift stands for. Now, she becomes kind of an object. Like, there's a real person, Taylor Swift, who makes music. But then there's this symbolic Taylor Swift who could become an embodiment of values and an embodiment of a particular way of being, who then becomes a figure that we want to live our life as. That becomes the measuring stick, the epidictic measuring stick of all the decisions we make. Well, what would she value? Oftentimes it's like, what would she do? Remember all this what would Jesus do stuff that was going on in like the early 2000s, WWJD and all this? Similar to that. It's similar to that, but there's all kinds of figures like this. Think of a figure you admire who comes to mind. It could be a teacher, a parent, religious figure. It's a similar kind of thing, but the difference here with epidictic is everyone can access Taylor Swift. It is a commonplace. And if it works for the rhetor, they can access that commonplace, run their argument through it, and find much, much more adherence in the world. So is it overrated? You could say it's overrated compared to what music ought to be, but you're still in the realm of praise and blame. It's still epidictic argument, right? We might say, you sound kind of judgy. Don't judge. Don't judge. It's just, I like it. You don't have to like it. Don't judge. But if we think of it through an epidictic lens, this is where we practice judgment, and this is where particular values get reinforced to draw upon later. If the audience's consensus is that Taylor Swift is an admirable person who really understands what it's like to be hurt by particular figures in society or by particular kind of discourse, people are going to use her music as evidence for policy in a deliberative argument down the road. So I was very surprised that my student, and also it's like Gen Z students get stomped on all the time as being kind of idiots, but I was very surprised my students were like, this is not serious enough for us to debate. We ended up debating AI, and it was a good in-class debate for a pickup debate. It was a lot of fun. Pretty interesting. I have a good class. But I just wanted to speak to you guys about this because I think epidictic argument is kind of overlooked. And I think this is why it's important to pay attention to pop culture if you want to be good at rhetoric. Paying attention to things like pop music, paying attention to things like sports, even if you don't like it. It's good to know who's in the playoffs. It's good to know which teams are bad and good because it's a way of connecting with the audience, but also it gives you important access to how people in the audience define good, appropriate, successful, hurt, pain, love, stuff like that. But also it's like, what is the big question I have with Taylor Swift is, what is this dominance and attraction of the American Midwestern high school experience is kind of a paradigm that everyone uses as a commonplace to map future relationships and map where you are in life now based on that. Why is high school that place that everyone returns to as the paradigmatic model for where things should be now? I think it's a super interesting question. I don't have any answer for that, but Taylor Swift definitely makes use of this commonplace quite a lot. Well, that's my take on, is it worth debating about Taylor Swift? I think the answer is yes. What do you think? Leave me a comment. Leave me a thought. Leave me some kind of, I might make another video based on what you say. But anyway, epidictic argument, commonplaces, Taylor Swift, and her new album, The Life of a Rhetorician. The life of a showgirl. It should be Life of a Rhetorician. Anyway, see you guys next time, and thanks for watching the video.
Ghost is all that we need.